Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Parker Show. This is episode, I think, 498, as we are in our 10th year of the podcast and radio show. Before that, we talk politics, Israel, and the law each episode, and this is a very important one, particularly those who are subscribers or ever read the Star Tribune newspaper. I unsubscribed many years ago. And looking back on it and considering the reasons I unsubscribed, I'm reminded of them this week. As there was an article in the Star Tribune that I want to talk about on the show today that some might say, trafficked in blood libels against the state of Israel, and promoted anti-Semitism, promoted Jew hatred, and certainly Israel hatred with unadulterated falsehoods. They're going to say, well, those are opinions and therefore they're appropriate. The narrative that the Star Tribune wrote with in this article is outrageous. They have a number, many outrageous articles, completely slanted, disgustingly so, quite frankly. One of the primary reason why I unsubscribed. But this one really caught my eye and has caused me to want to spend this episode talking about it. Let me give you a little context before we get into the short article. It talked about the UN and used the United Nations as credibility for statements being made in the article. The Star Trib did. Using the UN as credibility related to issues regarding Israel is a joke. And that should be known by anyone who does even the lightest of research. What do I mean by that? Well, before I get into that, this is the Andrew Parker Show. Go to theandrewparkershow.com. Subscribe. You'll get this background and opinion that you may not hear elsewhere, and coverage of issues that you may not have thought about or know about. So go to theandrewparkershow.com, subscribe, send us your email, and you'll get every episode as it drops. You can also find all the episodes there, including several interviews of Alan Dershowitz, of Mike Lindell, of Ben Shapiro, of even Jacob Fry back in the day, and Rudy Giuliani. They're all there, and many of mine on the show just with opinion, just like today. So they use the UN as credibility on issues involving Israel, which, again, is outrageous in and of itself. But why do I say that? Well, there are 193 UN countries. There is one Jewish state in the world. 193 UN countries. There are 56 plus one member states of the UN that are part of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. These are Islamic countries. There are about that number of Islamic countries in the world. So one Jewish country, Israel, and 50 to 55, 56 Islamic countries in the world. And when resolutions get adopted at the UN, these Islamic countries will vote routinely, consistently against the state of Israel. Even those that have cooperation agreements and peace agreements of sorts with the state of Israel, they'll routinely vote against. And just to give you a sense, I kind of assume that everyone knows this, but a lot of people may not. From 2015 through 2024, virtually 10 years, the UN General Assembly has adopted 173 resolutions against the state of Israel. Just in a decade, 173 against the state of Israel, and 80 resolutions against all other countries in the world combined. So more than double. All the resolutions against Israel are more than double compared to all other countries in the world. This must be a pariah on the world, the Jewish state of Israel. Worse than Russia and China and Iran and North Korea and all the other countries that have no civil rights, no justice system, no freedom, no liberty, which are the grounded values in the state of Israel. If they do wrong, the justice system throws them in jail or otherwise punishes or reverses the decisions. And it is one of the most robust of justice systems and the rule of law anywhere in the world, including being one of the most robust freedom of the press countries in the world, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, protests. You see them all the time in Israel. No, but that's the country that there are more than double resolutions against compared to every other country in the world. Did you know that? I mean, it's outrageous. It's crazy. Couple more statistics for you. That since 2006, the UN Human Rights Council, which, again, this is now quoted in the Star Tribune article, the UN says this, the UN says that, as if that is the standard that we should be applying to anything. Well, the UN Human Rights Council has adopted 112, since 2006, 112 resolutions against Israel, 45 against Syria. Syria, who killed hundreds of thousands of their own citizens. 45 resolutions against Syria in that time frame. 16 against Iran, the wonderful regime, the Ayatollahs, the mullahs in Iran. 16 in that time frame. 11 against Russia, Putin, Russia, all of the liberals and all, me included, calling out Russia for its gulags and its complete lack of freedom. And only 4 in that time period against Venezuela, one of the most horrific tyrannical dictatorships in the world. So since 2006, 112 against the state of Israel. This is the standard upon which the Star Trib, and I'll get to this in a minute when I talk about the article, holds up as support for the statements that it makes in this article. In 2025, let's get very current, the United Nations General Assembly just last year, since October 7th, since the massacre of citizens by Hamas, they don't call out Hamas. No, they have adopted 15 resolutions on Israel and 11 on the entire rest of the world. 1 on North Korea, 1 on Iran, 6 against Russia, 2 against the United States, 15 against Israel, though. I mean, it's outrageous, whether you look at the UN Human Rights Council, whether you look at the UN General Assembly, and it has been that way for decades. So to use the UN as support for making statements about Israel is nothing short of an outrage. There are a lot of people who don't know these facts, who don't know these resolutions, who view the UN as a even-minded, reasonable body, one which is going to treat everyone with fairness and no bigotry and anti-Semitism and hatred. Despite the fact that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation consistently, every time, votes against the state of Israel and passes and adopts and presses resolutions against the state of Israel, and a lack of recognition of the state of Israel. So it's shocking that the Star Trib would use that as the foundation. The Star Trib, in the article I'm going to talk about here, you're going to hear, calls out Israel for engaging in a genocide because, you know, the UN and the International Court of Justice, the most virulent anti-Israel organizations and haters of the Jews, despite all the freedoms, the rule of law, the justice system applied in Israel. When there are many countries around the world that are dictatorships, that are Islamo-fascist, that kill their own people repeatedly, that keep them in fear, that have no legitimate justice system. And they're not called out at all. But what about this issue of genocide? Now, I've mentioned on the show in the past a number of times, it's a blood libel. It is a blatant falsehood. It is like someone who gets their house ransacked and robbed being called out as the robber, or someone who embezzles from a company called out as being innocent while another who had nothing to do with it is called out as an embezzler. The genocide accusation has gained traction. It has been accepted. It has been repeated over and over again, much like Hitler and Joseph Goebbels repeated the propaganda of hatred against the Jews. No one stood up against it, and pretty soon it became truth. And even good Germans, Nazis or not, during that time period leading up to World War II, started to believe it and became more and more silent about it because they didn't want to be called out for challenging it. They stayed quiet. Or, again, they started to believe it. Well, it's being repeated on and on and on and on and on by our own government that we just elected, which, by the way, I'm going to do another show on. Is there a potential for electing a government in the United States before you know it, like the Nazi Party in Germany in the 30s? Is that possible? Before you know it, they're in power. And they start adopting laws that might be Sharia law or not. They might just be laws to take private property and Jewish people's private property first because of all the lies. Like, well, the Jews are genocidal. They engaged in genocide in Israel. People are silent. They don't talk about it. Well, there are a myriad of reports, including as determined in the UK, which are no friends of the state of Israel, and in the United States, that there was no genocide and has been no genocide in Gaza. Doesn't stop the Star Trib from calling it out and citing some, crazy UN or leftist organization that hates Zionism, that hates the state of Israel, using that as support and credibility. I'm going to get to that article in a minute. But beyond the reports, coming out of the UK, United States, full investigations, let's look at some of the reasons why Israel is not and has not in any manner committed genocide. Other than just looking at it, if Israel wanted to wipe out the Palestinian people in Gaza, they could have done it long and long ago. They did the opposite. They engaged in rules of combat that were the most protective of civilians as has ever existed in human history in urban warfare. Some of the most difficult urban warfare ever because of the tunnels, 300 plus miles of tunnels, because of the dense population in a relatively small an area, I should say, that I've been to, seen a number of times. So what are the reasons, other than just seeing it, that there is no genocide? This is a war. This is self-defense to remove from its border terrorist organizations that murdered in the most heinous of manner citizens, civilians, peaceful peaceniks, in fact, kibbutz residents in Israel. And it doesn't have to happen more than once for Israel to say no more. No country would be required to do that. That is not genocide. That is war brought on by Hamas. Hamas supported by, this is a digression, supported by those in the Democratic Party, supporting Hamas, and Palestinians who support Hamas, supporting them. It's an outrage. They are within the Democratic Party. They are not just pundits, which is bad enough in the Republican Party. They are elected officials with the banner of the Democratic Party. So aside from just looking at it, 5 takeaways as to why there's no genocide. Genocide refers to the physical destruction of an entire group, in whole or in part, that has been targeted on the basis of its identity. This is not Israel's objective in Gaza. If it had been, they would have been wiped out long ago. No, it's not at all. There's a new legal term to describe genocide like occurred in 1944. And quoting a lawyer, Raphael Lemkin, regarding he's of Jewish descent, defining genocide, refers to events including the Nazis' systematic extermination of the Jews, exterminating people based on their identity. The UN General Assembly recognized genocide as a crime under international law in 1946, and it was codified in the convention at the UN in 1948. But Israel is not committing genocide. Israel's war is against Hamas. Israel is not seeking to destroy the Palestinian people. Again, it would have wiped them out in the West Bank. It would have wiped them out in Gaza. Nor the Palestinian population of Gaza, which is what would need to happen in order to correctly apply the term genocide. Israel's leaders have repeatedly asserted that their campaign is solely against the terrorist organization Hamas. There are civilian casualties, no question. They are way overstated by the UN and others, but there are, for sure. That doesn't create a genocide. But a campaign against the terrorist organization Hamas is a military campaign and is the exact opposite of reflecting an attempt to eliminate a population because of their identity. Like the Jews in World War II, which was a systematic genocide of 6 million, as opposed to here, the Palestinian population. Is a genocide happening in Gaza? Number two, no. Israel is responding to a genocidal attack, in fact, by Hamas. And it is responding as most would do. The attack by Hamas was to wipe out any and every Jew that they saw, including babies all the way up to grandmothers and grandfathers, survivors of the Holocaust. While Hamas's military capacity has been significantly degraded, the group still retains control over roughly 47% of Gaza. And that's a problem. And this despite the agreement between Israel and Hamas that calls for the group's total disarmament. This is not genocide. It has no resemblance to genocide. Number three, Israel's actions reflect its desire to spare Palestinian civilians from harm, not to deliberately harm or kill them. In fact, the opposite is the case. The manner in which they carried on this response to October 7th shows that it was to protect civilian life as much as possible without compromising the objective, that is, the destruction of the terrorist organization Hamas, which is a proxy of Iran. Another way to destroy Hamas and avoid any further civilian casualties of Palestinians who live in Gaza is to destroy Iran. And who knows if that's going to happen or not. Destroy Iran, meaning the Iranian regime, the mullahs, the ayatollahs, from governing Iran. Number 4, why this is not a genocide. Hamas's actions are designed to cause harm to Palestinian civilians and blame Israel for it. Not Israel's actions, it's Hamas's actions. Israel is carrying out a war of self-defense to rid its border in the south of terrorist organization that is hell-bent on the destruction of the nation and to bring about as much pain and suffering on civilians as possible and to intentionally murder civilians, as many as they can. It is their actions, using human shields, putting civilians in harm's way, that creates the numbers that have been created. And the 5th reason this is not a genocide, the facts of the genocide charge simply don't add up. Those who claim that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza not only misunderstand the legal definition of it, as I've explained, they also base the charge on unsubstantiated claims, reports, for example, by Amnesty International, which are not only unsubstantiated, but as is consistently the case with Amnesty International, they go after Israel and apply blatantly unsubstantiated facts against Israel, always against. So it's unquestionable that many civilians in Gaza have died, and even more have suffered since October 7, since Hamas's action, not Israel's. However, there are so many unknowns with an important bearing on Israel's conduct that it's impossible to say with certainty. The number of innocents versus terrorists that have died. You know, the Ministry of Health of Gaza has a number, and they throw it out, and Star Tribune, for example, but certainly the UN, take it and run with it. And many periodicals in the world do. Now, some of them may say, as reported by the Ministry of Health in Gaza, but people who read it, read it as a fact. And it has been consistently, once determined with any substantiation, the numbers have dropped through the floor. Remember Jenin back in 2000s? It was said that there was a massacre by the Israelis in the town of Jenin in the West Bank. And it was spread throughout the world. Massacre. Thousands murdered. Well, that never happened. And in the end, once substantiated, years later, it was determined, that less than 24 died during the building-to-building operation by the IDF. So the number of innocents versus terrorists that have died, the numbers, and the announced death tolls do not separate innocent civilians from fighters. For example, 75,000 have died. Well, all right, this is a war. How many of them are combatants? And by the way, Hamas combatants that are firing mortars, rockets, missiles into southern Israel, that are shooting at and killing IDF soldiers are doing it in civilian clothing. It's not like they have a uniform. So first is the numbers are outrageous. The circumstances in which numerous innocents have been killed in Gaza is the second reason why it's just not accurate. The hospitals that they have Hamas terrorists in, that there are tunnels underneath, that munitions are there, and it is a place of refuge for the murderers of Hamas. And the difficulty of rooting out these killers from the civilians creates a very difficult scenario, and it just does not result in the conclusion of genocide at all. The nature of the military objective of attacks carried out by the IDF is simply not consistent with genocide in any form. So you simply can't say that there was a genocide. I might add that aid that Israel provided to civilians at their own risk of IDF who delivered it, of protecting it from being stolen. The Israelis who helped and pushed humanitarian assistance and aid into Gaza for Gazan civilian support is totally inconsistent with genocide. So let's talk about what is this aid. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you a business owner? Are you losing sleep because you feel your partner isn't carrying their weight, or because you no longer share the same vision or values? Are you no longer comfortable going into your own office? Are you walking on eggshells in the company you built? This is Chris Daniels, founding partner of Parker Daniels Keyboard LLC, a premier litigation law firm headquartered in downtown Minneapolis. For more than 30 years, I've specialized in business litigation and have helped hundreds of business owners resolve troubling business disputes. As a former certified public accountant, I get to the heart of the dispute, including financial issues. Business divorce can be messy, time-consuming, and costly, but doing nothing can cost you a lot more. Not just money, but emotionally, physically, and in your personal life. If you and your business partner no longer see eye to eye, and you're eager to take a proactive approach and make a change, please call me at 612-355-4100 and schedule a consultation. Or visit our website at www.parkerdk.com.
The significant qualities of aid is beyond anything that could be called genocidal. Since October of 2025, not even a year ago, since that time, approximately 1.8 million tons of food have entered Gaza with Israeli support, nearly 3 times the amount the World Food Program identifies as necessary. Do you hear that? Does that mean Israel is engaged in genocide? Crazy. The increased volume and variety, and I am quoting here from Israel, which has been substantiated. The increased volume and variety of food have significantly improved market availability and contributed to an estimated 72% decline in food prices because of the surge of aid. With Israel's support by Israel, the humanitarian effort extends well beyond food. More than 70,000 cubic meters of water are supplied to Gaza every day, exceeding international humanitarian standards. You don't read about that. You don't hear about that. And when I get to this Star Tribune article in just a minute, you're going to say that is wrong for them to report in that way. It's disgusting. Continuing on with the support here by Israel into Gaza. Healthcare has also expanded considerably. Since the ceasefire, more than 18,000 tons of medicine and medical supplies have entered Gaza. The number of functioning hospitals and medical facilities has increased significantly, and hospital bed capacity has grown by more than 50%. Is that a country that's committing genocide on Palestinians in Gaza? Yet Hamas theft of aid, interference with humanitarian distribution, intimidation of aid workers, and continued exploitation of civilian infrastructure receive little or no attention as to why humanitarian conditions remain fragile. Hamas is tearing it down because the genocide narrative is critical to Hamas, critical to people like Abdul el-Sayed, who the Democratic Party just supported. He speaks about this and is a liar about it. Critical to Hassan Piker, the anti-Semite that is good friends with Abdul el-Sayed as they run for the U.S. Senate. Obviously, Saeed for the Senate, with support of Hassan Piker, with support of AOC, with support of the Democratic Party. And they support this lie that there was any genocide. Israel is the first to respond to humanitarian aid and suffering around the world to countries that are not even connected to them. Consistently, along with the United States responding to catastrophes. It's disgusting what the Democratic Party is doing in their support of these haters of Israel. The international community's report repeatedly identifies Israeli actions as the principal drivers, while treating Hamas largely as a background condition rather than the active participant shaping the outcomes for humanitarian aid. No amount of aid can guarantee food security if humanitarian organizations are obstructed, supplies are diverted, or aid workers are threatened. Nonetheless, Israel has surged aid, and they did it several times prior to the ceasefire and during hostilities. Yeah, that you don't read about. All right, let's go to this article that I have been referring to now. In the Star Tribune this week, headline, University of Minnesota pays $250,000 settlement to, quote, a historian over Gaza genocide views. Raz Segal, yes, he is Jewish, a Jewish professor at the University of Minnesota, claiming Gaza genocide by Israel. He is a self-hating Jew, nothing short of it, who has hated Israel and the Zionist state from the beginning. Now, he wraps himself in the cloak of credibility because some members of his family were Holocaust survivors. Therefore, he must speak the truth when he says Israel is engaged in genocide in Gaza. Don't forget the statistics and the things that I have already talked about. So, by making those accusations, he ignited a controversy as he was set to join the university. And here's what the article, it's not that long. Here's what the article in the Star Tribune, in reporting on this professor who accused Israel of genocide. Here's what the article says. An Israeli-American historian who accused, I don't know that he's a historian, who accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza received a $250,000 settlement from the University of Minnesota after the university rescinded a job offer 2 years ago to lead the school's Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. So the university made an offer to this guy to head up the Holocaust and Genocide Studies department. And when there was a hue and cry of opposition to this outrageous hire, it was rescinded. So this Raz Segal said, I have the First Amendment right to say that Israel is engaged in genocide, and I am suing you over your rescission of my offer. Here's the Star Tribune's reporting on that. The settlement was announced by the Center for Constitutional Rights, which is, it doesn't say it anywhere in this article, but the Center for Constitutional Rights is a self-described progressive leftist constitutional right organization who supports people like Raz Segal who go after Israel, because apparently that's progressive. Continuing on. The University of Minnesota did not respond to a request for comment on Thursday. Quote, this settlement represents a successful refusal to accept the world of lies that blur an ongoing genocide. Remember what I just talked about in terms of it's ridiculous to call this a genocide. It's outrageous and nothing short of it, particularly when you're comparing it to someone who's going to head up the Holocaust Studies program. That blur an ongoing genocide and a commitment to continue the intertwined struggles for truth, justice, and accountability in Palestine and on our campuses. So he is an anti-Israel professor teaching our kids to hate Israel. The offer that was made to him was rescinded just 5 days after it was made, after two professors in the program, or on the advisory board for the program, resigned in protest. The two took issue with an article Segal wrote in Jewish Currents in October 2023. That would be the same month of October 7. The article called Israel's attack on Gaza a textbook case of genocide. So when your population and your civilians are intentionally burned, beheaded, destroyed, raped, murdered in cold blood, and you engage in a war of self-defense to destroy the terrorist regime on your border, that is a, quote, textbook case of genocide. This is the Star Tribune article. The Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and Dakotas had also raised issues about Segal, calling him an anti-Zionist and encouraging members of the public to voice concerns to university officials. In September 2025, a UN commission found that Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians. Did you hear that? The Star Tribune states as a fact, categorical fact, in total support for this anti-Zionist, Jew-hating professor. They state as a fact, in September 2025, a UN commission found that Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians. Well, it is a fact. But they don't say in here the UN that repeatedly attacks Israel, that treats Israel with negative resolutions more than double all other countries of the world combined. They're the ones that found, one commission found that Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians. What's shocking about that? They don't say in here that this UN commission has never once issued a proclamation positive toward Israel and has hundreds of times issued proclamations negative toward Israel. But it states a fact. You can't sue the Star Trib for defamation against Israel for stating this. It's true, but it has no credibility whatsoever. Again, it says, in September 2025, a UN commission found that Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians. It's a statement in complete support for this Jew-hating, self-hating Jewish professor, to support what he's saying. Oh, well, a UN commission. Most people who read this, who still subscribe to the Star Tribune, are going to view that as, oh, well, this professor, is speaking the truth. Couldn't be further from it. Next paragraph. In a statement, the Center for Constitutional Rights. Oh, yeah, this is that far-left progressive organization that hates the state of Israel and will come out opposed to it and bring cases against it consistently. It's reported in the Star Trib as if, oh, this is a Center for Constitutional Rights. This must be a very legitimate organization. Said it submitted a public records request to the university to obtain more information on the rescinded job offer. The organization made those documents available online this past Thursday, saying that they demonstrated the university was under pressure of losing donors from the Jewish community. No, they just didn't want to have a professor teaching kids who is making the outrageous blood libel that Israel engaged in genocide. And no matter how many times you quote the United Nations, it does not make it true. As I reported in this episode at the top of the show, the number of resolutions and the Jew hatred in the United Nations is beyond any standard. The University of Minnesota willfully violated the First Amendment and its own commitment to academic freedom when it succumbed to donor pressure and revoked Dr. Segal's job offer because he lived up to his values and called a spade, Maria LaHood, Deputy Legal Director for the Center for Constitutional Rights, said in a statement. There it is, the Center for Constitutional Rights, claiming that calling Israel genocidal is calling a spade a spade. I mean, it's outrageous. The Star Trib article goes on, though, in reporting. There's nothing in here that challenges whether Israel's engaged in genocide. There's nothing in here that challenges the propriety of the University of Minnesota having every right to rescind a job offer if the curriculum that someone is teaching, what if they were teaching, we're going to teach a curriculum that supports the murder of all Jews, or even more, that supports the murder of all blacks, and we're going to explain why it is that they should be murdered. Could you rescind the offer when somebody came out with that you didn't know about when you made the offer? This isn't calling a spade a spade. This is a blood libel. It's nothing short of it. It's a Joseph Goebbels lie against the Jewish people. The Jews, either here or in the state of Israel, nor the government of Israel, has engaged, nor would they ever engage, in genocide. It is completely, and the facts show it out, but just beyond that, it's not credible. So the Star Trib completes this article with 2 paragraphs. They say the October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas, an Islamist militant group. They don't call it a terror organization, which it is recognized as being by the United States government. That is an unadulterated fact. They don't refer to it as such anywhere. They don't refer to it as a proxy of the government of Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism anywhere in the world. They don't identify it as such. They call it an Islamist militant group. Oh. Resulted in 1,200 people killed and more than 250 abducted, according to the United Nations. Again, according to the United Nations, as if, well, that may not be true. You know, we don't really know, but the UN reported it. Why according to the United Nations? Why do you have to put that in there? When I read that, I thought, oh, well, maybe it's not a fact, so you can't just, state it. Kind of like the fact in September 2025, a United Nations commission found that Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians. They decided to put that fact in there, blatant, without anything else, without any according to this or that, according to reports issued. There was a UN commission that found this. No, they didn't do that. So according to the United Nations, 1,200 people killed and 250 abducted. The attack came after more than, but they do add this sentence. The attack came after more than 50 years of Israeli military occupation of Palestinian territory. A fact. There has not been Israeli military occupation of Palestinian territory. Indeed, in Gaza, there was no military occupation because that land was all given back to the Palestinians, mistakenly. Not given back, it was given to them. It was not their land, it was given to them. They believed they had a right to it. They didn't. But Israel gave it to them, and they created a terrorist state. The attack came after more than 50 years of Israeli military occupation of Palestinian territory. If you need anything else to describe how anti-Semitic the Star Tribune is, to write that sentence, which is greatly disputed. There has been no occupation by Israel. Israel is the indigenous people of this land. They were attacked repeatedly, and they were able to ward off these attacks to survive as a recognized country in the world. There's no military occupation. Now, there's a big argument over the international law of the boundaries and borders, but that argument falls on the side of Israel, not on the side of occupation of Palestinian territory. There is no such thing as Palestinian territory. What are you talking about? So this statement, as if it's fact, by the Star Tribune is, again, another, when people read it, it continues the trope of lies. And then they close with this paragraph. As of July 29, more than 73,300 Palestinians have been killed in the ensuing conflict, according to the United Nations. That paragon of truth and credibility, the United Nations. Let's cite them for the numbers. I mean, there's no substantiation for this. The UN, the same organization that has supported UNRWA, the Refugee Workers Agency for the Palestinians, the only group of people that has their own agency. And that group has been around for decades, and they were involved in the attack on civilians in Israel. The UNRWA workers were. Let's quote the UN that is the parent body of UNRWA for the numbers. And they close with this sentence: a vast majority of roads, energy infrastructure, and other buildings in Gaza have also been destroyed. So it's a complete destruction by the state of Israel, and they make statements as if they are fact. It's disgusting what this article. For people who don't know, they view it as true and as factual. Many in the state of Minnesota who subscribe to this and beyond this trash don't know what trash it is. But this certainly is. And it's nothing short of that. To quote the UN as the paragon of truth on issues related to Israel, is really unfortunate, and it's just downright wrong. I want to close today with talking about a comment made by an Arab American who has traveled a journey from being totally anti-Israel to being pro-Israel, and suggests that it's a model for the Arab world. It's a positive note, I think. Hussein Abdul Hussein was speaking at an event for his new book, The Arab Case for Israel. And this is the country. He knows it well. He is Arab himself. This is the country that the Star Trib wrote that disgusting article about and pushed the narrative of lies that is so dangerous against the Jewish people and the state of Israel. The Star Trib did. Hussein Abdul Hussein is now talking about that Jewish state. He said, "My story is the story of an average person who was told something, and when he dug up the story, it turned out to be something else. I was taught, like every other kid was taught, that Israel must disappear. And I believed it. Over the course of my life, events pushed me to try to learn about Israel. We covered the Israeli military pulling out of the south, and that day I drove my car to the border, which at the time was just a flimsy wire, so I could see Israelis. I became really curious. At the time, I could get on the FM radio of the Israeli channels. If you were in Lebanon at the time, your sources on Israel were staunch Israel critics like Edward Said, Noam Chomsky, and Norman Finkelstein. A couple of them Jewish, haters of the state of Israel, but getting credibility because they were Jewish, they must be speaking the truth. They were horrific haters and liars as it related to the state of Israel." Hussein goes on to say, "It was a long journey, and I decided this journey must be told for other Lebanese, Syrians, and Moroccans to understand what they are being fed is not true. I make the case that even if you think Israel has caused your injustice, you need to dig deeper, and you are wrong." So that is the book from the book, The Arab Case for Israel by Hussein Abdul Hussein. And we cannot accept lies or false narratives stated as truth, even if they have the support of United Nations reports or numbers, particularly when they are written as fact and they aren't. You've been listening to The Andrew Parker Show. Thank you for listening. We will be back soon with our next episode as we approach 500 episodes and also as we approach our 10-year anniversary. Thank you once again for joining us. Go to theandrewparkershow.com, theandrewparkershow.com. Until next time, be kind to your neighbor. For more Smart Plain Talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard. Mark Twain once quipped, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. When you are lied about and it spreads, the resulting mayhem and destruction can be, and often is, disastrous." Hi, this is Andrew Parker, co-founder of the Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm. I recently handled a high-profile defamation lawsuit on behalf of a luxury home real estate agent whose business was decimated by falsehoods spread about him. After nearly 2 years of litigation and 2 weeks of trial, the jury came back with a verdict of more than $2 million for our client. Parker Daniels Keyboard. We litigate cases, we try cases, and we win cases. With a record of excellence in achieving extraordinary results, Parker Daniels Keyboard lawyers have consistently won huge verdicts for its clients in the areas of defamation, civil rights violations, regulatory battles, and intellectual property theft. For wise counsel and winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, premier law firm in downtown Minneapolis.